Journeys of Hope. Life is a journey, and this is your spiritual passport. Where will the journey take us today? Let's walk together as we learn to become people of faith and hope.
Welcome to Journeys of Hope. I am Jason Nunez, your guide for today's journey, and I serve as Media Production Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope. Today, we are recording this episode at our St. Joseph studio. Pilgrim Center of Hope, producer of this weekly radio and podcast program, is a nonprofit ministry founded in 1993 with the mission of guiding people to walk in hope with Christ and the Church. Our journey today will be a pilgrimage with St. Vincent de Paul and the society that is named after this role model of faith. Now, you may know his name, and perhaps you may have heard of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, but how much do you know about what he has contributed to the Church? On today's journey, you will meet St. Vincent de Paul and hear about his life, be introduced to Blessed Frederic Ozanam, founder of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and bring to light its impact on communities across the globe. And finally, we will learn about how all of this can teach, encourage, and inspire us today. So joining me on our journey is Mr. Tim Williams, who is the National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you having me here. There's nothing I enjoy more than talking about our patron saint.
Very much. I've been looking forward to the conversation since we started emailing about this here. So your position overall is the National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Please share with us, what exactly does that entail?
Yeah, that's one of those titles that I think people outside the society and outside of Catholic circles would find a little mystifying. What is formation? So
Sure.
to answer it best, I probably should take a step back and explain the primary purpose of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, because most people are familiar with our charitable works, probably seen the thrift stores and other things. So you think that our primary purpose must be serving the poor. That's our primary activity, but our primary purpose since the beginning has been the spiritual growth of the members. And so in my role, when we use the word formation, it encompasses all aspects of our members' personal growth in this lay vocation, from prayer and spirituality to practical training, leadership development. So I'm part spiritual animator, part teacher, part trainer, part historian. My job involves a lot of writing and speaking, and I just probably made myself sound a lot more important than I am. I want to make clear that I'm a lot more busy than I am important.
Thanks for laying that out for me there. Animator, that's one of those roles, I guess, that I'm seeing a little bit more and more of. But yes, so let's go and start off here with a simple introduction about the Society's namesake. Please tell us about your friend, St. Vincent de Paul.
Well, Vincent was a very interesting man. He was born in the south of France in 1581. Although if we were getting deep into this historically, there's some controversy about exactly when he was born, but the current consensus is 1581, and he was one of 6 kids in, for the times, I guess, a modestly sized farming family. He grew up very bright young man and was sent off to school to study for the priesthood. But his ambition at the time was not really towards religious vocation. In 17th century France, or still 16th century at that time, the priesthood was a higher social station, and his goal really was to, as he put it, to retire, to get enough money to live a relaxed lifestyle with a higher social station. It wasn't until, some years later, after his ordination as a priest, that he found his true vocation, where he would become, the man we now know as the apostle of the poor. He was ordained as a priest when he was only 19 years old, which at the time, 24 was supposed to be the minimum age. That's one of the origins of the controversy about his birth date. But he was 19 when he was ordained. He worked for a time as a tutor for the very wealthy de Gondi family. They were from the very highest levels of French society. And so in some ways, you could say he'd kind of made it to his goal of being in those higher social circles. He had a very comfortable life in Paris, but in the course of traveling to the de Gondi lands, he went to a town of Gand, where he was asked to take the confession of a poor farmer. And this old man, by all accounts, was, a wonderful fellow. And so he figured, well, this will be easy. I'll take this confession. He's very ill, probably on his deathbed. But when he was there, the man completely unburdened himself. And one of the things he learned in the course of that was, first, the church can't always wait for people to come to us. We have to go to the people. And second, especially in the sacrament of reconciliation, he saw how important it was for people to be reassured that God has not forgotten you. He loves you. And he learned the importance of this gentleness in speaking with people. Now, fast forward a few months later, that year was the second really big event in this conversion of Vincent's heart. He was a pastor at a church in Châtillon in France. And before Mass one Sunday, he was told about a farming family just outside of town, parishioners, and they were all very sick, so sick they couldn't even take care of each other. And so in his homily, he called on the parishioners to go out and minister to the family, try to take care of them, and so forth. And after Mass, he headed out there himself, and along the road, he ran into people returning from the house, others walking along with him, bringing food, blankets, other things for the family. And he got there to the house, saw, food and things piled all around. And as he would recount this incident later, he realized there that people suffer less from a lack of generosity than from a lack of organization, because he could see that a lot of this food was going to spoil before the family ever ate it. And so it was that very week that he gathered together the ladies of the parish to start an organization called the Confraternity of Charity. And that happened on August 23rd, 1617. And I remember the date, Jason, because August 23rd is my wedding anniversary. Not the same year, although
right,
my wife might tell you it feels like 400 years at times.
Sure.
And so that we kind of date as the beginning of what we call the Vincentian family, which includes a number of organizations, including, of course, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, that are under the patronage of St. Vincent. Now, for Vincent, I said this is this great turning, this is this conversion of his heart during this period. And, he was in his late 30s. So there's hope for everyone under 35, at least, to make it to sainthood. But, like all people, we're called to walk this path of holiness. And Vincent really found that path at that point in his life.
So much there, Tim. Thank you for sharing that. There's a lot to kind of unpack, and just a couple points I wanted to kind of go back and revisit. In me researching St. Vincent de Paul, I did come across that as well. That statement, I believe he actually shared with his mother, where he said he was working so that way he could retire. So, it seems like it's something that he had in mind for a while. And it's when you take a step back and you think about, that was his intention when he was younger. And as he, became a priest, was ordained, started working, started serving the community, that paradigm shifted from I want to retire and live comfortably to I want to serve.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just a nice arc of what life and what the world can be, when you open your eyes and when you listen to, God's message.
Yeah. And, he had other experiences along the way, as we all do, that shaped him. There is a story that he was actually taken as a slave by Barbary pirates and held as a slave for 3 years. There are historians who disagree about the authenticity of that story, but since it's one that Vincent himself told, I'm going to put myself on Vincent's side. But that certainly sidetracked him from his plan to retire.
Sure. So one interesting thing to note, Tim, about St. Vincent de Paul, of course, that he's not necessarily the founder of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, which on the surface you would think, that he's the founder, right? But can you please shed some light on who founded the Society of St. Vincent de Paul?
Yeah, the name can mislead you there. He's not our founder.
Yes.
He's our patron saint. The society, I mentioned, Vincent lived from 1581 to 1660. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul was founded, though, also in France in the 19th century, in 1833. And it was actually founded by a group of young men, 6 of them college students, just out of their teens, really. And the primary founder among them was Blessed Frederic Ozanam. These students had been involved in a kind of a debating group, an academic group with other students called the Conference of History. And every week they'd get together, they'd debate the issues of the day and debate academic subjects they were all studying. They really didn't debate politics. They kind of left that off the table. But the students often lined up on 2 sides, Frederick and his Catholic friends on one side, and on the other side, this group of really anti-Catholic students, and they were all kind of adherents to this philosophy called Saint-Simonianism, which today we would use the term utopian socialism. That's not the term they used at the time, but they challenged Frederick and his friends in one particularly animated debate because they said, what is the good of the church in the world today? And they said, we'll grant you historically the church did a lot of great things in the past, but in this modern world, what good is it? And you don't get to say to us, hey, our priests go out and minister to the poor, our nuns run soup kitchens. What's the good of the body of the church, of you? Right. And that's quite a serious challenge. And Frederick, who was a brilliant man, he had, multiple doctorate degrees by the time he was 25 years old. And even at this point, at the age of 20, he was known for his intelligence, for his debating ability. He sometimes caused his professors to change their minds when he challenged them. But instead of challenging them or whipping out some great argument to just cut them down to size, he and his friends left and they thought about it, they considered it, and they said, there's really only one way to answer this challenge. It's to show the good of the church. And so we will do as Christ did. We will go to the poor. It was another year before they changed the name of their group from the Conference of Charity to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, formally, adopting him as the patron of the society.
It's Blessed Frederic Ozanam, correct? He is a blessed at this point.
Yeah.
So him and his friends, essentially, they decided that they needed to walk the walk.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's important to remember, too, when you're asked what is the good of the church in the world, it kind of goes back, Jason, to what I said at the top, when I'm pointing out the primary purpose of the society is the members' growth in holiness. And what they realized was that if we want to grow in holiness, we want to grow closer to Christ, we have to serve him exactly the way he told us to, which is among the least among us. In the hungry, we serve Jesus. In the thirsty, we serve Jesus. And so the good of the church is to bring Christ's love to all people. And Gandhi, not a Catholic source, once said that there are people so poor that they can only see God in the form of bread. And how wonderful is that for us as Catholics who also see God in the form of bread every Sunday? And so in a sense,
yes,
our service to the poor is almost a Eucharistic practice in bringing God's love to everyone in need.
Beautiful when you pose it that way. That is truly amazing. So, the mission of the Society of Saint Vincent de Paul. Can you please shed some light on us on what the actual mission is? I'm sure there's a mission statement, right? There are values. What are those?
Yeah, we do have a mission statement, and the scope of our mission really even goes beyond that, because the scope is that that no work of charity is foreign to the society, which is a pretty powerful claim for us to make, but it really is true. But the formal mission statement of the society is it's a network of friends inspired by gospel values, growing in holiness and building a more just world through personal relationships with and service to people in need. And that really sums up a lot of what we've already been talking about. We used to have a mission statement, just a little interesting point for you. We revised it a few years ago because our mission statement was about 4 paragraphs long, and we realized if you think of a mission statement as a short kind of elevator pitch, we would need a lot taller building to get through that elevator pitch. So we shortened it up and kind of captured this, that we're friends, and that's something Frederick talked about a lot was friendship, and a friendship that's more than drinking buddies or old
Right.
school friends. It's a friendship that's nurtured and strengthened by moral acts, by praying together, by serving the poor together, and inspired by gospel values, exactly those ones from Matthew 25, to serve the least among us, and growing in holiness, building a more just world, recognizing, as our Catholic social doctrine teaches, that charity and justice are indispensable to each other. And through personal relationships, we don't ask the poor to come in, take a number, fill out a form. We go to them one-on-one, person to person, neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend, and service to people in need. So it's a short sentence, that mission statement, but it packs a lot of meaning into it, meaning that we all carry with us in our hearts.
Yes, indeed. In doing some research here, Tim, I came across a quote from Blessed Frederic Ozanam, and it really struck me. It says, "No form of charity is foreign to the society." It's not something where it's like pick and choose and there's a criteria, right? It's something to where it's open overall.
Yeah, and that's really that's one of the things that really sets us apart from other organizations out there. And there's so many, especially here in the United States, organizations that just do wonderful work serving people in need. But there's 2 big things that set the society apart. And the first one is that because our members are truly dedicated to serving Christ, there's no greater motivation, I don't think. When we knock on the door, we know it's going to be opened for us by Jesus Christ. And we are totally devoted and happy to help. We're there because we want to help. There was a fella who had been visited by some of our members once who was explaining that, sometimes you're down on your luck, you call organizations for help, and you feel like you're a burden. He said, but the society wants to help, and that's a powerful thing to bring. And then the second is just what you mentioned, that no work of charity is foreign to the society. So I can give you a quick example of that. A few years ago out in Lubbock, Texas, a friend of mine who is a member of the society, and also at the time he was, I think he was the director of Catholic Charities, and he was saying, gosh, we administer all these grants, and some of them have strings attached. We have lots of money and resources, and we help a lot of people. But he gave this example I never would have thought of. He said, we have this scholarship program for single moms. And if that single mom has to drive to another town to take her classes, we can cover the babysitting, we can cover mileage or tuition or books, all that. But if she gets a flat tire along the way, we can't help with that. But the society can, because for us, it's anything that relieves deprivation or distress that harms the dignity of the human person. And so that might seem like a pretty small example, a flat tire, but there's many more examples. When we go to visit someone who called us, because they need food or because their electricity is about to be shut off, I can't count the number of times on those home visits where, I've gone in and you see when you get there, there's no furniture in the house. And so they didn't call to ask for that, but we're going to get them some furniture too. If that's within our means at the time, and it usually is, we're going to help with those other things that we just learn about, even if that's not why they called, because our purpose is first, and this is the first of what our church calls the permanent principles of Catholic social doctrine, is the dignity of the human person. So anything that restores the dignity of the person that we're serving is well within the scope of our works.
So let's talk about Saint Vincent de Paul's role in the society. So earlier, Tim, you mentioned, the Vincent, he's a patron saint, right? He's a patron saint of this society, and it's actually a family, correct? It's a family of societies. Yeah. It's not necessarily just, I believe he called it the Brothers of Charity, or the initial group that Frederick was a part of, but it's a family, right, of societies. What's Saint Vincent de Paul's role overall?
So as a patron of society, we have in our church what's called charisms, and this Vincentian charism came to us through Vincent, and also St. Louise de Marillac, who was a contemporary of Vincent's. And so through him, we have this spirituality that includes, our Vincentian virtues, and those come to us directly from the teaching of St. Vincent de Paul. They help to guide our behavior. Simplicity, humility, gentleness, selflessness, and zeal. Each one of those things guides and informs how we interact with each other, with the world around us, and especially with our neighbors in need. We study the words and the life of St. Vincent de Paul. Frederic Ozanam said that, we owe to our patron a twofold devotion, imitation and invocation, by which he meant we imitate his life, even as he in turn imitated the life of Christ, and we call on him often in prayer.
So he really does have an active role in the society, which I feel is amazing. It's amazing that not really just have a name and, say, okay, he's a patron saint. There's a prayer that we have, that we ask all of our members and everyone involved to say, but there truly is an active role that he is playing.
Yeah, there's no question about that. He's part of that great cloud of saints, and the one who looks directly down on, I think, all the members of all the Vincentian family organizations. And, the society is one of the newer ones, really, that I mentioned earlier, the confraternities of charity, also known as the Ladies of Charity. The Ladies of Charity USA is part of that, and internationally they're known as the AIC. Vincent himself founded the Congregation of the Mission. That's the Vincentian priest. So when you see a priest who has CM after his name, that's a Vincentian priest. And then the Daughters of Charity, co-founded by Vincent and St. Louise de Marillac. And the daughters are still very active. And again, if you see a religious sister with a DC after her name, that's what that means. And here's some fun trivia for you. I would say the most famous Daughter of Charity is the Flying Nun. That winged cap that she wore was the headpiece of the Daughters of Charity up until the late 1960s. And the author of the book that that TV show was based on had seen a Daughter of Charity, a rather diminutive young lady, on the streets of Paris, and a big wind came up, and she put her hand on her hat there and sort of lifted up on her toes a little bit, and that inspired the story. So that's
Wow.
that's our wonderful Daughters of Charity. And then in the 19th century, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and there are many other organizations. A Daughter of Charity named Betty Ann McNeil put together what she calls the Vincentian family tree, documenting small and large organizations, all under Vincent's patronage, all sharing this charism and spirituality. And at the risk of sounding like I'm bragging, the society is by far the largest of those organizations.
Yes, indeed. And I believe it's operating in over 150 countries. So, there's a tremendous reach there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not 100% certain exactly how many members, but it's over 800,000. It could be a million. I mean, there are some countries that don't really count. I don't mean they don't matter. I mean, they literally don't count their members. So we don't know for sure, but it's over 150 countries now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And all of this from Blessed Frederic Ozanam answering a challenge from a fellow classmate, Frederick and his friends really, really considering what was said to them, and saying to themselves, there's got to be a solution, and that solution's them, right? And it's just blossomed into this organization. So, praise be to God, and also thanks be to God for them for answering the call. Truly, truly amazing. Well, folks, you're listening to Journeys of Hope. I'm Jason Nunez here with Tim Williams, National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And after this break, we, of course, will continue on our journey. We have touched on the Society of St. Vincent de Paul some, but in the second segment, we're going to dive in and unpack more about this society. And of course, St. Vincent de Paul himself, and for us to strive and follow Jesus. So stay with us, Journeys of Hope. We'll be right back.
You're on the everyday journey of life, and sometimes it's tough to keep hope alive. Well, that's why Pilgrim Center of Hope is here for you. Not only does Pilgrim Center of Hope provide you programs like Journeys of Hope, but did you know you can also find other helpful media productions from Pilgrim Center of Hope on our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org. Every first Friday, take an audio retreat with Jesus called Meet the Master. Every third Thursday, have a social with the saints. And our new quarterly series, Who is the Man of the Shroud, meets at the intersection of faith, true crime, science and medicine, history, art, and much more. Find it all at pilgrimcenterofhope.org or on your favorite podcast app. And keep hope alive in your daily journey. Pilgrim Center of Hope, guiding people to Christ.
Hello, this is Jason Nunez.
And Angela Ciolana, both from the media department at Pilgrim Center of Hope, who produce Journeys of Hope. Would you like to honor someone special in your life and support the production of this unique weekly series?
We are in need of monthly sponsors for upcoming Journeys of Hope programs to help cover some of the production costs by a donation. If you've sponsored a month of Journeys of Hope in the past, we thank you for your support.
Pilgrim Center of Hope has a donation wish list, and on it, several months of upcoming Journeys of Hope programming are still needing sponsors. If you're interested, please consider selecting a month that you wish to sponsor by going to pilgrimcenterofhope.org and under the Give menu, select Wish List.
You can also choose to dedicate your donation in honor or in memory of someone special.
Thank you for joining us in our mission.
Now, enjoy the rest of your journey. Welcome back to Journeys of Hope. Our journey today is a spiritual pilgrimage with St. Vincent de Paul. Joining us on the way is Tim Williams, National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. We, of course, in the first segment, we did touch some on the society itself and kind of some examples of assistance, that's provided there. But in the second segment, I'd really like to kind of get into it there. So that way we, our listeners, and we can all learn more. So what would you say are some of the ways that the Society of St. Vincent de Paul has made an impact on the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first and most important way, well, it's not by publicizing ourselves. I can say that because we may be one of the best kept secrets in the Catholic Church anyway. You know, a lot of people know our thrift stores, but they may not be aware that there's nearly 1 million members around the world, and that our primary work is these home visits, to go to the homes of people in need who call us, to sit with them, to listen to them, to pray with them, and to help them in any way that we can. You know, as we talked about earlier, no work of charity is foreign to the society. And this work has grown and been blessed by divine providence since the first day. You know, we started out with these 7 young men in Paris, students at the Sorbonne. And it grew so rapidly. It was just 12 years later, in 1845, that the first conference was formed here in the United States. And so in this work, most importantly, you know, we draw others to Christ, not through proselytizing, but what Pope St. Paul VI called our wordless witness, that we act as Christians, we work as Christians as Christ showed us and he taught us. And as St. Vincent de Paul said to his missionary priests, they should be more charitable towards your neighbors so that they may see the beauty and holiness of our religion and be moved to return to it. And so that's a big part of our mission, our own growth in holiness, and to share God's love. And so that's the biggest part of our impact. And of course, you know, unlike in Frederick's day or in Vincent's day, you know, we also do report to the IRS like any other nonprofit. So we
Sure.
do keep very accurate records of who we serve. Now, Vincent it was very important to him to keep accurate records too. I don't want to pretend that didn't happen at all in the past. And so if you look at our annual report for the society here in the United States, you'll see just remarkable numbers of, you know, nearly 5 million people served in a year. About 1.8 million of those home visits that I mentioned. And you can just imagine the impact of that, because that's not just, you know, mailing out packages to 1.8 million houses. That's people going to those houses and forming what our rule calls relationships based on trust and friendship with people in need. And they are real relationships. You know, these are people in our own neighborhoods. We see them around outside of the home visits too. You know, Frederic Ozanam once said in talking about, reporting out to the public, really, more than just keeping records, he said, charity must never look behind it, but always before, because the number of its past benefits is always very small, and the present and future misery it solaces is infinite. And that's quite an insight that he had there too, that, you know, if we just sit back and say, look at all this great stuff we did. You know, he even pointed out that the church had been doing good works at that time for 1,800 years and had no real history to report on that. It didn't have time to sit and recount all the works, whereas there were brand new philanthropic associations that after a year had, you know, quite a resume they could brag about. Of course, the backstory of that quote from Frederick is he had been looking for the records and couldn't find them. And he said, well, you know, they're not that important.
Well, there's one thing I want to go back to, Tim, is when you're kind of going through what you shared there, there's one word that's common, but I want to point it out, is you said that the society helps people, right? Yeah. You didn't say the society helps Catholics, right? The society helps people. And, you know, again, in doing some research here, you know, I came across a document that just kind of gives information about the society overall. Its title is the National Council of the U.S. Society of St. Vincent de Paul. It's at the top of this document here. And one of the bullet points it says is the society serves people in need regardless of creed, ethnic, or social background, health, gender, or political opinions.
Yeah.
And this is being the hands and feet and face of Jesus to everyone, to God's children, right? And
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
to me, that's a beautiful. That's putting your faith in action, right there. By helping, these are essentially the corporal works of mercy, sprinkled in even with some spiritual works of mercy. I'm sure at times, just in entering into dialogue with the people that are the people that you interact with and that you help as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the language we use changes with the times, and that may sound to some like just a generic non-discrimination statement, but this goes back to St. Vincent's time. That quote I mentioned earlier, he was talking about serving people who were not Catholic. That's always been what the society does. It's always been what St. Vincent taught and Frederick taught. We serve people not because they're Catholic, but because we're Catholic. And that's what we're called to do, to live our faith in every part of our lives. That's the call of the apostolate of the laity that we all share. And being Vincentians, being members of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is just our special way of living our faith and living that vocation.
So Tim, yourself as the National Director of Formation for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, I feel compelled to ask you a question about the topic of hope, right?
Yeah.
So all the good works that are done by the society, bringing hope to those who may not have any, that's a part of what the society does. The times we're in right now, they're tough. Just to put it simple, they're tough. How can we learn to not despair in times such as these?
Yeah. There's I'll go outside Vincentian tradition for just a minute, because there's a St. Augustine quote that I love. He said, "Bad times, hard times. This is what the people are saying, but let us live well and the times shall be good. We are the times." I always keep that in the back of my mind, but being a member of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, of course, I can always draw on the heritage and the history of our whole Vincentian family. And, when Vincent was starting up these organizations, 1617 to 1660, during that period, France was being devastated by the 30 Years' War. In 17th century France, there was a plague epidemic on average every 7 years. And during these times, masses were canceled. People, knew enough to try to keep their distance from people who were sick. And yet there were the priests and brothers of the mission, the daughters of charity, the ladies of charity, still out there serving the poor. And then we fast forward to 19th century France, Frederick's time. His freshman year at the Sorbonne, there was a cholera epidemic that spring. And he saw, people dying literally in the streets from cholera. And that summer was yet another revolution of the many that happened in Paris. There are barricades up in the streets, when he was a student walking through those streets. The people who are familiar with Les Miserables, that's the failed rebellion that happened the summer after Frederick's freshman year. And, throughout his short life, he only lived to be 40. He saw multiple revolutions, multiple epidemics. And so we remember those stories not to make ourselves feel bad, like, oh, gosh, we just have some, maybe hyper partisanship. We had COVID, but how does that compare to the plague over and over again? But we don't do that, because we can only live with the challenges in front of us. And the challenges that we're faced with, but we can look at those stories and be inspired. And you remind ourselves and others that this too shall pass. Frederic Ozanam said the first duty of Christians is not to fear themselves, and the second is not to frighten others. And the fact is, times are always turbulent. Our motto in the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is Serviens in Spe. That's Latin for serving in hope. And that's not the hope just that, the lights will stay on because the electric bill is paid. It's not just the hope that there will be more groceries tomorrow. It's not just the hope that the rent will be paid. All those things are very important. And we do those things as much as we can with every penny that we've got to our names. But the real hope is the eternal hope, the one true hope that doesn't lie in this world, doesn't lie in this world's troubles, and it doesn't lie in this world's triumphs. It's beyond that. And that's why with every piece of bread we bring, with every rent check that we deliver, we bring hope and we bring love to everybody that we serve.
Beautiful. That hope is priceless, right? When that's given, and when it's given, it's like a breath of fresh air for someone in need. Yeah. Well, it's giving them, literally, you're giving them breathing room, so that way they can also in turn breathe and give that sigh of relief. Wow, that's
and I'll give you a little example of that, Jason, if I may. I'm
sure, please.
In addition to being the director of formation, I'm a member of the society. I go on the home visits every week, and my conference at my parish. We have a number of homeless neighbors near our parish, and so once a month we have a dinner for them. But it's about a lot more than the food, because at this dinner we invite our parishioners, really anybody who wants to come. There's no charge for anyone who comes, because we don't want to have two lines. One, if you're poor, go over here. If you otherwise you can pay. So it's free for anyone who wants to come. We do accept donations, but there's no charge. And we set up long tables so everybody sits together and talks and enjoys friendship. And we play music as well, and sometimes people sing along with it. And it's just so, wonderful to see, the children of our parishioners running around this big gym with the poor children who come in, but there's nothing dividing them. And what we're really trying to offer is that community and that love, because, you can get meals a lot of different places, but for people who live on the streets, there's so many times when they're sitting maybe on a bench, people walk by and they avert their eyes. They don't even say hello. They just keep walking. And if you can imagine feeling lonely in a crowd, that's what it's like. And so at least for that one day when we gather together, hopefully the food we serve is pretty good, but the most important thing that we're sharing is our friendship and our hearts.
Beautiful. You're giving them that opportunity for community. Sharing a meal really, it fosters that opportunity to have that community.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So Tim, what drew you to becoming involved in the Society of St. Vincent de Paul?
Yeah, my wife and I first joined about 10 years ago, and we were empty nesters. Our kids were grown and gone, and so there was no more coaching Little League or teaching CCD. I thought, I'll leave that for the young parents. I know you could keep doing it, but I wasn't going to be that guy still coaching the team without a kid on it. So we were looking for some type of ministry to be involved in. And, we didn't want to join what I'll call a conference table ministry. We wanted to do something. We wanted to, St. Vincent de Paul has a famous quote, which I didn't know at the time, but he said, "Let us love God, but let it be with the strength of our arms and the sweat of our brows." And that's what we wanted. And so I traveled a lot in my work at the time, and I was actually overseas in Germany. And at a very late hour at night, my wife called me because there had been an invitation to serve at our church, trying to start a new conference of the society. And she told me about it. And she said, "I think this is what we've been looking for." And I said, I think so too. She said, "Good, because I already signed us up." So that's how I joined the society originally. And, like a lot of our members, I joined it so I could do something, so I could really go out there and live my faith. But what has kept me in it is this growth in my own understanding of our real purpose, and beyond that, of seeing in myself a real, transformation in my heart, in my whole outlook on the world through this work. And I really do feel that every day I grow closer to Christ, physically and spiritually, through this work, and that's why I stay. Beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that. I can understand that. It's personally, I have two sons who are in high school, so still helping out with the faith formation classes. But I can understand as my wife and I begin to realize our time is pretty limited with them now, right? So what you're talking about earlier about looking for that ministry, I understand that. So thank you for sharing that, Tim. Let's go and shift gears here now. We're gonna go back to St. Vincent de Paul. So St. Vincent de Paul had a philosophy that appealed to a lot of people. His simple beliefs to teach and help society, to make them aware of the Christian spirit, they were excellent. If Vincent were still on earth today, and if he was still with us today, what advice do you think he might give us?
Yeah. So I will be bold and put words in Vincent's mouth. I think probably he would say something that sums up very much of his life and his teachings. He would say, stop talking and start doing. He was a man of contemplation, but he was very much a man of action. And his was very practical theology. As I just shared with you, love God with the strength of our arms and the sweat of our brow. He was giving a conference on the virtues, those 5 virtues I mentioned to you earlier, and he explained them, talked about virtue, and he said, reason can help us understand virtues, but it doesn't mean anything unless it goes on to action. He even likened virtue to an apple on a tree. He said, even though I see it very clearly and I find it very beautiful, I'm not holding it for all that. I'm not enjoying it. Reason helps us to see virtue clearly, but it doesn't give it to us. And so in that way, he's kind of echoing Aristotle. If you want to become a builder, you build. If you want to become virtuous, you do virtuous things. And that's good for other people, and it's good for your soul, for your heart, for your own salvation. And if we think about Pope Francis in Fratelli Tutti, he kind of touched on this idea too. He said, society often has an elegant way of shifting its gaze under the guise of being politically correct or ideologically fashionable. We look at those who suffer without touching them. We televise live pictures of them, even speaking about them with euphemisms and with apparent tolerance. And so he was getting at this same idea. And of course, in that letter, he's talking a lot about the parable of the Good Samaritan. And that was about the one who stopped, the one who helped, the one who did something. And the one who is the neighbor, Christ taught us, is the one who acts with mercy.
Good stuff, Tim. I would like to think that if St. Vincent de Paul was alive today, he would be pretty much right along with what you're suggesting he would say there, right? Do something. There's a fairly well-known praise and worship song that talks about, there's things going on in the world today, why doesn't God do something about it? And I believe it's the chorus that says he created you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's essentially a call to action, to what you said, to do something. And it's society in St. Vincent de Paul, is the way I see it, it's faith in action. It's truly what it is. It's faith in action.
It absolutely is our faith in action.
So St. Vincent de Paul, he had a special devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. It said that when he was still very young, his mother had taught him to speak to her heart to heart and to pray to her, to ask for her intercession in all occasions. What key lessons can we learn from St. Vincent de Paul about taking a heart-to-heart approach to those we encounter in our lives?
Yeah, Marian devotion is very central to our Vincentian vocation throughout the Vincentian family. And of course, I mentioned for the society, Vincent is our patron, but Mary is the patroness of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And back in 1834, we adopted as one of our society's feast days the Feast of the Immaculate Conception because of that. And that was before the Immaculate Conception was church dogma. It already was a very special day to the society. So we regularly invoke Mary in our prayers. And this idea, and of course, the obedience and the gentleness of Mary do inform our actions in the society. For Vincent, this virtue of gentleness is all part of that. And he really learned a lot about gentleness from one of his friends and mentors, St. Francis de Sales, as well. And so he taught the importance of gentleness as a virtue that's about the neighbor. Gentleness is about the neighbor. It's about always showing them the understanding, the kindness, the patience. A few months ago, I'll give you, I think, a good example of this idea of working heart to heart. I was spending the night in an emergency warming shelter that we were hosting for the homeless, and there was a lady staying with us who couldn't sleep. Her feet hurt, and that's pretty common among the homeless. They don't have a lot of opportunities to even take their shoes off, much less change them. There was nothing really we could do about her foot pain. We even had a nurse with us that night. And so she just came and sat with us, put her feet up on a chair, and she sat with us, all of us just quietly in the dark. And I noticed from her breathing that she was crying. And I looked over and I could see there were tears on her cheeks. And before I knew it, I was crying too. And I didn't want to. I thought, I need to be comforting. But that was when I remembered these words of St. Vincent de Paul. He said, we can't see someone suffering without suffering along with them, or see someone cry without crying as well. And he said, this is an act of love, causing people to enter one another's hearts and to feel what they feel. And it's a very powerful thing. I know that that lady went away from there in the morning and her feet still hurt, but I think she knew and knows I see her pretty often, that I'm a friend and I care. Showing that you care, really caring, is the most important thing that you can do. We use that word charity a lot, and sometimes just in the vernacular, we use it to refer to the actions, but charity isn't the actions. Charity is the reason for the actions. Charity is love. Charity, our catechism tells us, is to love God above all things for his own sake, and our neighbor as ourselves for the love of God. And that's the virtue that members of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, imitating our patron saint, try to live in all of our works and in every part of our lives.
Indeed, and showing that you care. That's just one of the lessons that I feel has come out of our time together today, in sharing lessons of Saint Vincent de Paul and also Blessed Frederic Ozanam as well, showing that you care. Thank you very much for sharing that, Tim. I appreciate that very much, sir. Well, folks, I do want to share a jewel for the journey, which is, of course, one of the traditions here at Pilgrim Center of Hope, that we give you a jewel for the journey, which is a spiritual gem that you can reflect on throughout the week. So this week, we ask you to reflect on the words of Matthew 25:40, which states, "Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me." We are going to bring this episode down to a close here with a short prayer. We're basically going to say the glory be. So Tim, if you can join me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay, in the name of the Father,
Father,
and the Son,
and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Glory be to
Glory
the
be to
Father,
the Father, and to the
Son,
Son,
and to the Holy
and to the
Spirit,
Holy Spirit,
as it was in the
as it was in
beginning,
the beginning,
and ever shall
is
be,
now, and ever shall be,
a world without
world
end.
without end. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and the Son,
Father.
and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Well, fellow pilgrims, we do invite you to come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of pilgrimages, conferences, and media production outreach. We are a nonprofit ministry. Please join us in this vital mission of evangelization as we guide people to Christ and the church. You can learn more at pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or of course, you can call us at 210-521-3377. Tim, before we sign off, if anyone is interested in finding out more information about the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, can you please provide your website as well, please?
Yeah, they can find us at SVDP, as in St. Vincent de Paul, svdpusa.org.
Thank you very much. And of course, we will provide a link to say the Society of St. Vincent de Paul's website on our website as well, on the webpage associated with this episode. And please visit the website and learn how you can help and help the society out there as well. Fellow pilgrims, let's strive to live each day with love, faith, courage, and hope. Until next time, may God bless you and safe travels.